All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Health Movement Podcast. I'm Derek, your host, teacher of over 20 years and a certified personal trainer. And I have another awesome guest with me today. But before I introduce her, I just want to reiterate that we are not doctors. So before you go changing any programming or nutrition or anything like that, please consult with your physician. And if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify, wherever it happens to be, give a like, follow, and make sure you follow our guest on Instagram and everywhere else that she is. So without any further ado, with us today, we have Jayne Baker. Jayne, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
And it seems like you have a few different things you do. I didn't know how you wanted to describe yourself or introduce yourself, so I thought I'd throw it your way there.
Well, I'm actually a lifestyle consultant and I help people with their holistic health from a mind, body, spirit perspective. So, our whole slogan of the business is to help people command their mind with positive thoughts, nourish the body with high vibrational, healthy foods, and love the soul as much as they can.
I love that. I love that. Can you kind of break down what in your mind holistic health means?
I think it means having a balance of the three and I think what happens a lot is that we see people treat the physical body or try to balance the physical body and they forget there's two other aspects going on. We have a soul, we have this vibrational spirit to us, and then we also have our mind, which can run amok sometimes. So the
Yes, it
idea
does.
is to help people steer their thoughts in the right direction, feel a good, healthy sense of self love, and then, of course, nourish the body as much as possible for that whole trilogy to come together in a state of balance.
Now, I want to dork out with you in a little bit. When we were talking before, quantum physics and all that came up, and I really want to dive into that. But before we do, can maybe you tell us how you got to this space where you are now? What was your journey like?
Yeah, so I came from a family up in the northern tundra, as I call it, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and we were big, heavy eaters. A lot of meat and potatoes in my family, and I had digestive issues my whole life, which ended up turning into an overweight problem. I've ate, so I can carry a little bit better, but I ended up being about 202 pounds at my heaviest, and it was uncomfortable and I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't keep things down. The hydrochloric acid in my stomach was totally depleted. So I ended up at the age of 19 being put on 5 different prescriptions by doctors that were supposed to help my stomach, and they didn't help my stomach. They band-aided the symptom, and they ended up giving me some other opportunities in the body that later needed to be balanced. And I decided I was so fed up with it. And I met a woman in 2006 who put a bottle of enzymes in my hand. And I said, what are these going to do for me that like 5 prescriptions aren't doing? And she said,
Yes,
just
exactly.
try them, take them. And I always tell people whether this is a placebo effect or not, it worked. I felt relief instantly. And I was like, okay, I can now eat something without feeling sick and being hunched over or from, running to the bathroom and throwing it up. So I was hooked on holistic health at that point. I wanted to dive in, learn everything I could about enzymes and about how they work in the body, the pH of the body, because that's a huge part of what we focus on with my business as well, is getting that pH balance correct within the body. And so I was just kind of off to the races. I lost 80 pounds and I've maintained that for almost 20 years now. And I attribute that to proper digestion, good health of the gut, good microbiome in the gut, and of course, a lot of physical activity. I ride my bike all the time. I walk a lot. So I think it's just, again, having everything together to have that whole puzzle come together nicely.
That's awesome. That's awesome. You're able to figure that out. I was actually, and I'm not going to get into conspiracies or anything like that, but I was watching. I can't think of his name. It's going to bother me. Dr. Eric. Shoot. Anyway, he's big in Instagram and he does a lot of posts. And there was something about the baseline for what high cholesterol is has dropped significantly over the last like 20 or 30 years. I think even further than that. And it was, there are parts of your body that need cholesterol. I think a quarter of your brain is regulated through cholesterol, as well as other parts of your body. So he was talking about and insinuating that a lot of it is financially pushed through, like you had said, 5 different drugs you were on and nothing was working there. And it's not necessarily pushed by doctors themselves, but there's things out there where you start to wonder what's actually the best way for me to go forward and what's going to make me as healthy as possible.
And I'm glad you brought that up because to me, it's when I became a certified natural health professional, there's a lot of things I learned that shocked me and disappointed and disgusted me, to be quite honest, about money and the driver of what it has to do with health in our country. And I think, as I always say to people, God forbid I'm in a horrible accident. Yes, take me to the ER. But when I have a headache or if I have a little bit of a cold, I'm not running to the doctor. I know that there are things I can take from the earth that will help to bring my body back into balance. And I think that some medications are needed sometimes. Absolutely. I don't want to say that I'm discounting the entire medical community at all. I just wish that they would be a bit more mindful in their approach and instead of working on just that physical aspect of the body and that quick fix, dive a little deeper and say what's going on here with the whole picture because we are a spiritual being having a physical experience here. And so everything is going to manifest in the body first spiritually, and then it's going to show up as a symptom physically. By the time it's showing up as a symptom physically, there's already something going on that we need to go back and take a look at. And it's interesting, everything, and we'll get into this when we talk about quantum physics, everything is energy, right? So everything in the body has this vibrational frequency. And it makes sense then that when we have something that goes a little bit out of frequency, that wave isn't going correct as it should, it's going to manifest into another problem. And every organ in the body has a vibrational emotion attached to it. The lungs, for instance, are attached with the emotion of grief. The liver is attached to the emotion of anger. So there's the term angry drunk. I mean, what does the liver do? It processes our alcohol for us. So it's interesting when you get into understanding the vibrational frequency behind things. I think this is where functional medicine really should take the forefront because people just treat this physical and they don't think about putting the whole picture together.
I like that. I like that. So you had mentioned the enzymes you were given. My guess is that that's you did a lot of research or you've learned a lot about enzymes and how they affect the body. Can you dive into that a little bit for us?
Yes. And so enzymes were my saving grace, honestly, like I said. And I think, we have to eat, we have to put food in our body. And it's been argued that 98% of illness can be traced back to undigested food in the body turning to waste and toxicity. And then it breaks free and it's causing other issues. So in my case, like I said, the hydrochloric acid, which would further aid the digestion, had been destroyed by the prescription medications. And I do want to add a quick note. The prescriptions did help for about 2 or 3 weeks. I did feel relief and I thought, okay, great. I'm off to the races. I loved Chick-fil-A. So I went and I got myself a big, huge, spicy chicken deluxe. And I was like, oh, I'm good to go. I could eat this. And within an hour and a half, I was in so much pain. I'm like,
You
okay,
didn't
this
really
isn't going to
ease
work.
yourself back into it there. You
I
just
dove
don't.
right into the
I
deep
love it.
end. Extra Polynesian sauce. So, but essentially digestion begins in our mouth. So we have enzymes in our saliva. It contains enzymes. So we don't chew our food down to the consistency of cake batter to let those enzymes really get to work. And then we take a drink of something, right, with our meals, and we wash away the hydrochloric acid, which would further aid in the digestion. And then we possibly eat something together that doesn't have the proper components of breaking down, like a meat and a carb. Those take two different types of enzymes to break them down. So we are putting the wrong things in our body. We are destroying the enzymes by, furthering, like I said, drinking something. Also, when we hit 40, our naturally occurring enzymes have decreased by half already. So it's kind of like a big hodgepodge, really, what's going on in our stomach. And digestion takes a lot of energy from the body. I don't know if you watch Seinfeld. I'm a big Seinfeld person. If
Yes.
you remember the episode where they were trying to get I think it was Jerry's girlfriend to fall asleep, and they were feeding her the turkey because of the tryptophan.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, I
so
do remember that.
I always reference that because I'm like, people go into what we call a food coma after we eat something. And it's because your body is expending so much energy to digest and break down what you've eaten. Because if we do not break down our food, we're going to die, because where's it going to go? So what happens is the pancreas is the first organ to become stressed. Its main job is obviously insulin production. But what it's going to do is say, wait, I'm going to put my job on hold and give you some digestive juices because if I don't, you're going to be in trouble. So then what happens is we see a lot of type 2 diabetes coming on the scene because the pancreas is so depleted from a lack of digestive enzymes in the body.
And it is, and I might be wrong with this, but from what I had looked at too, it's also like with the simple carbs and the processed foods that we're eating a lot of time, it dumps insulin into the bloodstream to try and deliver the glucose to the different cells, but it just never stops because there's constantly more food coming in, and we're not giving our stomach a break, which I'm guessing, and hopefully I'm not wrong here, but somehow fasting or intermittent fasting is maybe something that you've talked about, or that you go into to try and give that gut a little break so the rest of the body can work. Am I
I think
wrong with that?
intermittent, no, you're not wrong. It's never a one size fits all. And there's people that, it seems like it's a fad. Okay, let me try the South Beach diet. Let me try the Atkins diet. Let me
Yeah.
intermittent fast. And I always remind people, take into account, first of all, what energy are you putting out every day? If you're somebody who's very active, you need to make sure that you're very careful with how you're doing that intermittent fasting because it can cause a lot of issues. It is said that once you get to a good point with your body, like I do 1 day a week, I don't eat. I just strictly drink lemon water to help alkalize my system. I give my digestion a break. I know a lot of other people that'll do the intermittent fasting. It's not something that ever worked for me. I like food too much. I'm going to eat. I can go 1 day, but beyond that, I've got to have my food.
No,
It
I
is
found what works for me is I love breakfast. That's turned into my favorite meal. And I
absolutely.
love, like, it's a big meal. It's, 700, 800 calories. If I put extra cheese in there, it's a little bit more, but that's my big meal. And on days I'm dialed in, I'll be done. I teach, and lunch is around 12:30. So I'll eat from, like, 6:30 to 12:30, and then I'm good for the day. But I started doing a really intense, interval training workout one day, and I made the mistake of doing it on a day I was intermittent fasting, and I was like dizzy and cooked. I'm like, that was stupid. So I'll do that on Mondays, and I eat regularly on Sundays, and then do like a bigger window on Saturdays. So then I have the fuel to do what I need to do on Mondays. You obviously adjust based on what your activity is going to be. So it's not set in stone, like can only eat this amount, all that. Like, you have to adjust things. But you're right. I learned very quick. And going into it, I'm like, I think this is dumb, but there's only one way I'm going to find out.
Well,
And I was,
luckily you found out, I guess, the hard way, but a better version of the hard way, because there are incidences where people will completely black out, or they'll stand up, get dizzy, and fall down briefly. And I always tell people, think of a car, right? If you are going from Los Angeles to Miami, you need to fill that car up with a lot of gas. But if you're going from Los Angeles maybe to Santa Barbara, you're not going to need as much gas in that car. So
yes.
if you're, just like to your point, if you're putting out a lot of effort that day and you're burning a lot, in our brains, people don't realize the more we think and the more work we do, even with our brains. I know people that don't do any physical activity, but they have such high demand jobs, and they're like, all I do is eat, and I'm hungry, and I'm hungry, and I'm like, you're burning it off. You're actually
Yeah.
taking more energy from your body. So yeah, it's just, good to be mindful about what we're putting in versus what we need. And I think here in America, I lived in England twice, and I was so impressed with their way of life because, first of all, they have smaller plates. In America, we have plates that are 3 inches bigger than the standard dinner plate. And again, I come from a family of big people that like to eat a lot of food. And it was common growing up to eat 2 or 3 plates of dinner,
I
big
remember
old
going
pile of.
to, did they have Vinny Testas where you grew up?
No, I don't remember
That
that.
it was an Italian place, and it was, I don't even know how big the plates were, but it was like twice a normal dinner plate, and they loaded that up, and it was excellent. But I think they went out of business because they gave too much food for a normal amount. But you're right.
Well,
You're
and
right.
we have these, all you can eat buffets and things like, and I tell people, I'm like, food should absolutely be enjoyed. Cook with love, make it an experience, but you don't need to eat more. I mean, they have you've heard of the blue zones, I'm sure, right?
No, I have not.
Oh, okay. Well, so the
The
blue zones are
blues.
these, yeah, there's these places around the world where people are living to 100 or longer in these concentrated areas. And there's a book called The Blue Zones, and then he turned it into a Netflix documentary called Live to 100. And it's, for somebody who likes to read, try the book. If you're not a reader, try the documentary. It's fascinating because part of what they talk about is exactly what we're having this conversation about: how eat until you're not hungry, not until you're full, and be a part of a culture that, be a part of a community that feels like you're connected with. And it really is interesting the way that these people are statistically living longer lives because they're being a lot more mindful about what they're doing.
Do you remember any of the locations?
So one of them is in Costa Rica. I've actually been to that one. They have one in Sardinia, Italy,
I
Loma
was going to
Linda,
say Italy.
California
Italy
is the
strikes me
only
as right.
US one. And I can't off the top of my head remember where the other ones are. I haven't talked about the Blue Zones for a little while, but Live
But
to
that's
100 is
interesting,
a
though.
great documentary.
I will try to read it. If I have to watch it, I'll watch it. I paint houses during the summer and I listen to audiobooks while I'm on the ladder. So
Okay.
that I get most of my quote unquote reading done during that time. But that's interesting. I've heard about places that they live longer based on their lifestyles, and the social piece of it. You mentioned community is huge. And I think that gets overlooked, especially like in today's day and age where there's so much. We're on a screen together right now, but it's great in some regards. But if this is what you're spending most of your time doing, it's harder to build that community and the social connections that are so vital.
And having a sense of purpose, I think that's what I see a lot of, living in America, and especially where I live in downtown Tampa. I love it. It's beautiful, but it is lacking a type of people that have a mindfulness about them and a sense of purpose. And it's sad because I see it happening more and more around the world, and especially in cities. And it's such an important component of holistic health to that's that self-love piece. Again, have a purpose. They have a word for it, and I'm probably not going to pronounce it right, but it's Ikigai. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's basically knowing your purpose in life, and having that and being connected to a community that you have that sense of purpose and connection with.
Like that. I like that a lot. Can you mentioned the pH? I just remember science from high school, and we had those strips, and that's as far as I can go with pH. Can you explain that a little more?
Yeah, so pH is obviously just, it stands for potential of hydrogen, and it's really our speed of life. So think of the body going along like a conveyor belt. And over here we have 5.0, which would be the pH of battery acid. And over here we have 8.0, which would be like a piece of coral in the ocean, for instance. What you want to do is be balanced right in the middle. So somewhere between 6 and 7. They say 6.78 is perfectly ideal. Typically, what happens is disease and cancer and things like that and illness, they thrive in this acidic environment. And when you look at most foods, especially the ones eaten in this country, they have a very, very high acidity level. So things like fried foods, processed foods, a lot of the trash, right? That's that good
Yeah.
every now and then comfort food. But when it becomes a lifestyle, it's going to slow down your speed of life. And there's vital nutrients that we're missing. The three most important ones that are right in that fine line of that scale is going to be iodine, which nourishes our thyroid, our master gland, magnesium, which protects our heart, and then zinc, which is good for our immunity. So most people fall well outside of that range into the acidic area, and they're going to experience brain fog, fatigue, sluggishness. They're going to be far more prone to illness and disease. Myself, when I started into holistic health years ago, it started with the enzymes. Then I learned about pH, and I got a pH test kit, tested it, and it said, you hold the litmus paper up to the little chart, and I'm watching, and it's not changing, and I'm like, okay, I'm not satisfied with that. I'm gonna do another one. The paper's wrong, and I do another, and I couldn't get it to move. It was just horrible, like 5.6 pH or something. So when you eat more alkaline foods, things from the earth, things that are grown in the sunshine, things like, green leafy vegetables, salads, fruits, dark cacao is a fabulous thing. That's actually, I tell people all the time, if you're going to have chocolate, because I am, have dark cacao. That's got good antioxidants. It's a little bitter. It takes some getting used to, but It's something that's a higher vibrational food and it's going to have a higher alkalinity to it. And this is going to keep your body into more of that range. You don't want to be too alkaline, right? Because you want to be balanced. Everything is about balance. If you're too alkaline, your blood actually stops pumping. So you really want to be right in the middle. And there's a saying we have in the natural health business: when you're green, you're clean. So on that little pH test kit, if you're coming up yellow, you're acidic. If you're blue, you're too alkaline. But if you're green, you're good.
Nice. So you're saying earthy foods, so salads, vegetables, fruits, things that are natural that you find on the perimeter of the supermarket for the most part, except for the
Yeah.
candy aisle right by the dark chocolate. That's, you got to make a stop there.
I tell people, just do laps around the outside of the grocery store. The aisles are not your friends. They are not. It's bad. It's bad news in the aisles. And, I think too, meat is a big point of contention with a lot of people. I don't know if you ever saw that documentary that Arnold Schwarzenegger did years ago when he talked about becoming completely vegetarian. And I use him as an example because I tell people, I'm like, look, if Arnold Schwarzenegger can have that body and not eat meat, you don't need to be in the gym 10 hours a day, eating 15 chicken breasts and, 10 steaks. Meat is one of the worst things for the pH of our body and for our body in general. Do I eat meat every now and then? Absolutely. But I like carpaccio, steak tartare. I will eat sushi. Meat in a raw form is a much healthier way to eat it, and it's also more digestible for our body. They say that the more you cook meat, the closer it is to well done. It's about the consistency of your stomach digesting a raw.
Now, Jayne, I love meat. Like, what are you doing to me here?
And again, in balance, there's people who eat meat 3 times a day, every day. And I can't imagine that. I don't eat meat 3 times a day. I might eat meat 3 times a week if I'm lucky.
See, that's now I got to look at that a little bit more because
Well, and
I,
actually, it clouds the blood. It's really interesting. And again, it's not one size fits all. I know people who eat meat. I mean, gosh, my grandfather was a tough old German guy who ate a lot of meat. And I think he was like 86 when he dropped out of a massive heart attack, but was going and going before that.
yeah.
It's different for everybody, but knowing the science, and I'm a science nerd. So when I saw what it does to the blood and how it then can affect the brain, I was like, I'm
Now, are
not into
certain
that.
meats better for you than other meats?
Again, I think it's eating, clean organic meat is another thing. And when I say this, people are like, "Oh, but it's so expensive." And I'm like, "What kind of gas do you put in your car?" "Oh, I put in super premium." "Okay, so you'll put better gas in your car than you'll put food in your body." Help me understand that one. So I think eating as clean of meat as you can and eating it as close to raw as you can. And again, just balancing it. Take an enzyme with everything you eat. So it's going to break down that meat even more. I think obviously fried chicken, Chick-fil-A, not a good. It is as good as much as I love Chick-fil-A. It's not something I allow myself more than once every maybe 6 months. But
Yeah.
it's just balance.
I get it. I get it. I grew up where you had your veggie, you had your meat, you had your starch, and I will say my mother's been a great example with nutrition and everything because she'll even do like, and I make fun of her, double veggies. So she'll, you've got your
Love it.
whatever it is, the normal like broccoli or whatever, and then there's always a salad too that goes with it. And,
That's
she knows how
great
to.
that she started you on that.
Yeah. So I try to follow that as much as I can. Things get busy and it's like the frozen veggies or the quick salad or something like that, but I guess that's better than nothing at all there.
It actually isn't. People always talk about, well, frozen isn't good. And I'm like, it's something, flash frozen is actually a lot better than canned. If you can find things that are flash frozen, they
Oh,
are said to be full of more nutrients. It's a little harder sometimes to find that. And it's unfortunate that, we live in a country where organic food is so expensive and the cheap,
yeah.
quick, easy things are, what, a $5 heart attack in a bag. And it's not sustainable long term because our bodies are going to eventually respond and start giving out. And that's going back to that, how everything has a vibration. Food has a vibration. So when people, especially people that I've worked with, when I look at what they're eating for years and they tell me how they feel, and we move them to a more alkaline diet, and we teach them a little bit more about being mindful with their food, portion control, adding in an enzyme, getting in a probiotic, clearing up the gut microbiome, getting it balanced, because that's our garden. That's the garden that needs to flourish, that gut microbiome. People have reported not only sleeping better and losing weight and feeling better, but they're like, I think more clearly. I don't need to take this med. And I'm like, okay, well, you need to talk to your doctor before you stop taking that medication for
Yes,
depression.
exactly.
But if you feel like you don't need to take it, that's amazing. Go consult with your doctor. It's so many, I mean, hundreds of people over the years have come back to me and said, I don't feel this anymore. I don't feel that anymore. And I'm like, well, you're putting better fuel in your body. There's a
And
reason.
a lot of times I feel like we don't even realize how we're feeling because it's been a slow progression to get to that point, or we've just been living that way so long it's all you know. And then once you clean it up and you start to think more clearly, and you sleep better, you have more energy, and you're like, oh wow, this is different. It's kind of like when someone's eyes start to go and they're getting blurry and blurry. It's not like an overnight thing. You all of a sudden your vision's terrible, but then they put on glasses and they're like, whoa, this is something new here, you know?
Yeah, that's exactly
So
how it works. And I tell people that too. I'm like, this didn't happen overnight, and it's not going to go away overnight. So it's going to, be patient with yourself, because you didn't get to 300 pounds overnight, or you didn't have these things manifest in the body overnight. It's a slow undoing, and the body will always heal itself. It'll go first for how do I want to say it? What I guess the most detrimental thing is, and it's going to almost heal itself backwards. So it's really just about, again, I like to use the word mindful a lot. It's being mindful of, what are we putting in? How does it make me feel? Do I want to break that cycle, or do I want to continue it on?
yeah. And that guest I had on a long time ago, Joel Diego, had a great analogy for it. Was more weight loss and getting fitter, but he said, like, if you walk 10 miles into the forest of bad health, you got to walk 10 miles out. And it's going to take time, but it's easier, with you, if you have a guide or somebody to help you along the way, where people can come talk to you and get that help. Like, you can just go straight out and you're not going 2 miles one way, 3 miles out, and it takes you 30 miles to come back out because you're trying to learn everything now. So just kind of shows you do need time to offset everything that's been going on. And it helps to get a coach and somebody to kind of guide you along the way.
Yeah, well, and it's like, Darren Hardy, he's a favorite author of mine. He wrote this great book called The Compound Effect. And so I always reference that when I tell people, okay, hydration, for instance, it's not what we learned in school, drink 8 glasses a day. The ideal hydration is actually cutting your body weight in half, and that's how many ounces you should drink a day. So a 200-pound person should be drinking about 100 ounces of water a day, assuming they are not out in the heat sweating, or they're not trying to detox or cleanse. And people are like, well, I'm only drinking, 16 ounces a day. How am I going to get to that? And I'm like, use the compound effect. Increase it by 8 ounces every day. Do this for a couple days, then increase it again, then increase it again. And eventually, within a couple weeks, you're going to hit your target mark. And you don't want to overload the body too soon. Remember juicing, when juicing was a big thing for a
Yeah.
long time. Well, you're not supposed to juice what you can't eat in one sitting, because it can actually it can be a toxic load for the body. So people are like, "Oh, I'm juicing, 10 carrots, 4 apples, a whole head of lettuce." I'm like, "No. No, you need to do 2 carrots, half of an apple, maybe a little bit of ginger. If you can eat that in one sitting, you get a little cup of juice, that's what you need to be juicing." And it's also extracting a lot of sugar.
Well, that's yes. I was going to say that too. You can get rid of all the fiber and all the healthy stuff and just drink the sugar water, and you're not
Right.
quite getting what you should be out of that. That's awesome. Now, can we geek out for a minute?
Yes, let's go down the quantum rabbit hole, please.
Okay. I don't know what you know. My knowledge is based on things I've watched and things I've read over the last like 6 months or 5 months, whatever it happens to be. But it's fascinating, and I find myself just going down these rabbit holes. And I Can you explain it to the audience maybe in some layman's terms for us?
I'll do my best to make it digestible. So, the quantum field, there's a few aspects of quantum physics I like to talk about, and I know we're coming up in our time, so I'll try to be brief, but like I said, make it digestible. The quantum field is basically the container for all things, and it permeates our entire existence. And they found proof of this in 2012 at CERN by identifying the Higgs boson particle, which was basically proving that it's an excitation of the standard model. So the field is constantly responding to what we're thinking and how we're feeling. When we are, there's a saying, energy flows where attention goes. So when I talk with people about manifestation, I always give the analogy of, Stuart Smalley on SNL doing daily affirmations. I'm like, I don't want you to just stand in front of the mirror and do affirmations. I want you to understand that there is a scientific basis of this, that this is real. So the field is something, like I said, it's constantly responding to what we're thinking and we're feeling. And when we are consciously interacting with the field, that's when we become good manifestors. So essentially, it's a participatory universe that we are existing in. And people always often say, well, this happened to me or that happened to me. And I'm like, it's not that it's happening to you, it's happening for you. You just have to learn how to manipulate the energy and direct it the right way. What they did, my favorite study that I love to talk about that they did is called observation affects reality. And this is also known as, what they did was they shot a double slit of light through a wall. And so you know about that, right?
I do.
So you would
Yeah, talk about it.
you would think that, if you have a wall with two slits in it and you shine a light through it, that two slits of light are going to come out on the other side of the wall. And what they found was that the more that they observed and expected an outcome to be one way, that is what happened. And when they were not observing, because energy will exist as a wave and a particle. So when we become stressed out as humans, we are existing as more of that heavy, dense, and we are not as much of the particle of possibility, right? So I always tell people, what you focus on is what you're going to get. The expected outcome is what's going to happen. So, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole because I don't want to lose anybody. I'm just trying to kind of touch a little bit
No,
here,
keep
but
going.
and it's really, I think observation affecting reality is the most important. If anybody wants to know anything about quantum physics, read that experiment. I wrote an article about it in Brains magazine. I have the link on there. It's called Creating with the Field. Because what we are, like I said, what we focus on is going to be exactly more of what the outcome is going to be. The other thing I love about quantum physics is, and I'm sure you're familiar with this, collapsing the wave. You know this term, right?
Yes.
So this is where, every possible outcome exists in the quantum field, and this is called superposition. And the idea is just like I said, going back to observation affecting reality, the more that we focus on something, the more that we are going to collapse that wave potential into one specific outcome. So this is where I really try to hook people in and let them know what you are focused on is what is going to happen. And I think most people go through life, and I myself did it for many years, unconsciously manifesting. They were thinking about what could happen, what could go wrong, what could this be? They're worried, they're stressed, they're angry. We are shrinking our energy and we are becoming more of that, like I said, heavy, dense energy, and we are not such a wave of possibility when we feel like that. The field is responding to us and it's like, okay, you're stressed, you're freaked out, you're panicked, you're thinking the worst, you're going to get more of that. And so what we want to do is be aware of what we're thinking of and collapse that wave potential into that one singular, from all the superposition into that one singular outcome that we would ideally like to experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's an incredibly good point about manifestation and the focus, because you'll hear a lot of times where people will blame certain outcomes in their life on their circumstances or whatever it happens to be, but you can find examples of people who are in the same situation who have very different outcomes and are able to turn that almost those things that people would view as a weakness or as an obstacle as a strength, where they're able to build on that and they're able to work through whatever issues they are and use those as ways to learn, as opposed to things that are setbacks. And it goes into that whole people's view on failure. And you don't learn from doing things correctly 10 times in a row. You learn from failing over and over and over again, but having the right mindset to look at it and say, like, all right, this didn't work. Let me figure out why. Now I'm going to try this. Now I'm going to try this. You don't fail until you stop actually trying.
I agree. Yeah. And I think accountability is the big thing here. I think people don't want to be accountable. They'd rather kind of get their pity points and, play
Yeah.
victim and be like, oh, well, this happened, that happened. My childhood was this, my husband was that, whatever the case may be. It's not that I don't have empathy for people, but I'm like, okay, the story that you tell yourself about yourself, you can change at any time. You're writing that story. So when do you want to stop hanging on to the bad childhood, this, that, the other? And when do you want to write a new story? And, this kind of lends into the other thing I love about quantum physics is quantum entanglement
Yeah.
shows that we are all connected. So this is where a lot of the self-love in the business that I'm in does, because I want people to understand that what happens to me happens to you and vice versa. What affects one is essentially affecting us all. It has been proven through quantum physics. And so I try to lead by example with a lot of the work that I do with the homeless people. That's something I attached to my business about 5 years ago. And I wanted to bring people in and help them be a part of that, where it's like, look, a portion of every sale that we have, you are helping me feed and clothe these people. And the people are like, why are you doing this? And I'm like, because we're all connected. What is happening to one is affecting us all. And I call it bringing up the group average. But essentially, what we're doing is I think that we're going to raise the vibration of the planet slowly as we all begin to understand that connection that exists between all of us.
That's awesome. And I love that you're using your position in your success to help people who need it. And I don't know, the question should never be, why are you doing that? It's, well, what can I do to do the same sort of thing? It's unfortunate
I
that
get a lot of kickback from people. A lot of people have said, why don't you do it anonymously? And I'm like, well, that kind of defeats the purpose, because the idea is to lead by example. My example in life was Princess Diana. I think she was one of the most fabulous human beings that ever lived. I remembered watching her walk through the minefield. If you remember that, years ago, she walked through a landmine field to try to prove about what changes need to be made. And I always said to myself, I'm going to do something one day that's going to be in that vein of helping people. And living downtown, I see homeless people all the time. Unfortunately, they exist, and it just hurt my heart. I'm like, I can't walk by them and not at least say hello or get to know them. And it just kind of took on a life of its own. There's some now that I've known for almost five. Well, yeah, there's a few I've known for 5 years. The rest that I see more regularly, I've known for about 3 years, and just make them food, sit with them, talk with them, bring them clothes. I share their stories with their permission on my Facebook page, and some are on the website as well. And I love it. I mean, there's times I go out and I just sit with a group of them, and I just talk to them for the sake of, I love having a conversation with them.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I think that's a great note to end on there. How can people get to see more of what you're doing? And I don't know if people can give donations or help out in that regard, but how can people get in touch with you the best way?
So our website is momentumlifestyleconsulting.com, and I'm on Instagram at Break Your Inertia is my handle there. And on Facebook, it is Momentum.
All right. I will put all of that in the show notes so that people can reach out to you. So please, everybody, give Jayne a follow, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, or just hop onto her site and check out all the stuff that she's doing to help everybody out. So, Jayne, thank you so much for taking your time today and hopping on with me. I really
It
appreciate
was
it.
so much fun. Thank you for talking a little quantum physics with me. I love it.